What's up, guys? Welcome back to Michigan Muckraker. My name's Michelle. Today is September 20th of 2023, and I wanted to give you an update on the dam situation here in Michigan, but also I want to talk to you about the strikes that are going on, not just in the state of Michigan, but in a few states, and it's being threatened to be escalated. So I'll get into that. And then I want to talk to you about the Whitmer kidnapping case that finally has a conclusion. I mentioned it previously just a little bit, and I wanted to actually get into the summary of the case and again the conclusion and what it all meant. And yeah, pretty embarrassing, I suppose. That's what one word that was used. I don't know if embarrassing is the right word, but we'll use it too. And then I wanted to discuss the United Nations, which is doing a digital summit right now, the SDG Digital Summit. So just explaining a little bit of what they're doing and what that means to us. It means a lot because they are planning local rules, but they think globally. So they are getting around our constitution all the time. And ChatGPT, I would talk a little bit about that. So we're going to jump in. The first thing I'm going to show you is Gotion, really quick, is getting ready to hire in Mecosta County. The company, which is planning, has 10 to 15 jobs available. So you come down here, and we have very happily concurred that for the first positions, we will definitely recruit within a 25-mile radius of the facility. That ensures that those jobs that we've been promoting for the local community stay in the local community. See, guys, we gave you a bone. We threw you locals a bone. We gave you 10 to 15 jobs, the first ones. We keep our promises. That's what this sounds like. It sounds so snotty and condescending. I've already interviewed, as a matter of fact, 2 different people this morning quickly. Really? You interviewed quickly? And who are these people? I would like to know. That's why I'm putting it out there. If anybody finds out who these first people are that got a job, I would like to know. Um, it would be interesting to see if there's any pro Goshen people in there because something that he says later on here really ticks me off. So even though it's not posted, this is Chuck Thelen quote. Even though it's not posted, Michigan Works is doing a fantastic job as they always do, and we've already got 2 very qualified candidates on the table. Those candidates, he said, are also local. Easily, I would say a 10-mile radius, matter of fact. So, financial controlling specialist, purchasing logistics, electrical engineering, and construction management are the jobs. Come down here. We see about 40 very vocal people, said Thelen. Everyone else I've talked to in the community, whether I'm walking through Tractor Supply, or I'm getting my hair cut, or I'm going into the Family Dollar or Meijer or whatever, people recognize me and they stop by and say, "Thank you so much for bringing jobs here." I think people are very interested in this. See, he's just a normal guy. He goes to Tractor Supply and he gets his hair cut and he goes to Family Dollar, and people come up to him and are thanking him. Do you believe it? Because I sure as hell don't. But the fact that he says very 40 very vocal people is a straight up lie. Once again, if you look at the Green Charter Township meeting footage that I have showed in my last video through the Midwesterner Better Audio. I have my own video, but the audio is lacking. I need to fix that. I'm aware. But all of those people in that meeting, there was over 111 because people were standing outside. So let's say 120 people showed up. Every single one of them was no Goshen. So that 120 is a lot more than 40 because the pro Goshen people had their own meeting. They refused to show up. So 40 is a lie. Moving on. The dams. I went to the dam meeting. What was it? Monday night? Yes, Tuesday night. Yeah. I went to the meeting on the Hardy Dam and Croton Dam, hosted by Consumers Energy. They did hire a third-party facilitating group, which would definitely use the Delphi technique. I feel like the Delphi technique was used. And really quickly, I'm just going to read this. Delphi technique, developed by the Rand Corporation. You know what? I'm going to pull myself up. All right, here we go. Developed by the Rand Corporation as a Cold War mind control technique, Delphi is used to channel a group of people to accept a point of view that is imposed on them while convincing them that it was their idea. In the 1970s and 80s, it was used to convince landowners of the merits of accepting general plan maps. Delphi can be used on any group, from just one person to the entire world. Trained facilitators present a range of choices to a group, but have tailored them to direct the outcome. This is most often done in public meetings called visioning meetings, put on by your city or your county or your electric company, Consumers Energy, to get your opinion on your town 2020 or 2030, or what we're going to do with the 13 dams, since we allegedly want to get out of the hydro business. That's what they're saying. They want to get out. It's more than that, and we're going to see here when I play this video. But I'm going to finish this really quick. Money for these programs often come from federal agencies, members of the President's Council on Sustainable Development, in the form of grants to your local government. The meetings are advertised as an opportunity for you to give your input to an exciting new plan for the redesign of your city center for the future. You'll usually see it as a specific plan for a redevelopment project or a regional transportation plan that involves housing and land use restrictions. Also, Grand Rapids, they just had these visioning meetings, and Michelle Wise from Michelle Wise Photography went there, and they were talking about 15-minute cities. This was a Delphi technique meeting. They used the Delphi technique there. They had facilitators to direct the outcome. This is what they're doing. This is Rand Corporation, right? This is psychological crap that they're doing to us. You'll usually see it as a specific plan for a redevelopment project. Okay, Delphi is used in school board meetings, in trainings, at neighborhood association meetings, and other places where the organizers want to give the appearance that they have listened to community opinion and incorporated it into their plan. By the way, you'll never hear the word Delphi. They will never acknowledge that they're doing it. This comes straight out of Rosa Koire's Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21. And by the way, good morning, Dragonfly. Again, thank you for coming to hang out with me this morning. So please check out Rosa Koire's book. If you go to Democrats Against UN Agenda 21.com, there's a lot of information on there, but it's a technique that's used, and it was used on us when I went to this meeting, although it wasn't as aggressive as the meeting that Michelle Wise went to for Grand Rapids and their 2030 vision. So let's watch this video. And as soon as it loads, and I can pause it again. So real quick, I want to know what exactly this Fox News or this camera guy or whatever, this reporter, what they asked, because they never said, Consumers Energy never said anything like this during the meeting. And I was shocked when he said it to this Fox News reporter.
Residents in Newaygo County are becoming part of the discussion tonight when it comes to the future of dams in the area.
The community input session comes after Consumers Energy announced it was putting its 13 dam fleet on the market, adding that it currently operates them at a $152 million loss. And in Newaygo County, that includes the Croton and Hardy dams. Now, you may remember a year ago, the utility company announced 4 potential future plans for the 13 dam fleet: tearing them down, relicensing them, selling them, or putting up an alternative structure at the sites. This evening, officials from Consumers were on hand to give a presentation on what the potential closures would look like and answer questions from residents, including one from the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly, who says no matter what, many people are going to be affected.
It'll be a big impact. I mean, if the dams stay in place, there are environmental problems. If the dams are removed, there are environmental problems and opportunities.
You hear that? You hear that? Muskegon River Watershed Assembly, paid for by Eagle, the grants. They get grants. It's a nonprofit, and so they get our money, but through grants, and they are beholden to the grant, the people that issue the grant. They told me that. That's who they're accountable to. And this guy just said that there's environmental concerns if you keep the dams. What environmental concerns if you keep the dams? They don't talk about any of that. Again, we are being led into basically feeling guilty, the people that live in this area, that we want to keep these dams. And even though everyone across the state of Michigan comes over and not everybody, but a lot of people use the big Muskegon River or all of this river, either to kayak, canoe, go fishing, what have you. This river, again, the second largest river and the third largest watershed in Michigan. And so it's not just us that live here that should be feeling guilty about the fact that we want to keep them, and that it's $1.4 billion is what they need. And so it's not fair, they said, to put the money, put the cost onto the consumer's energy. It's not fair. So either we pay for it that live here, or they sell it, or, they have a predetermined outcome. And that outcome is, I think all of them but Hardy Dam are going to be gone. And this person just said, the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly, one of the leaders, I should know his exact job title, but he gets the most money out of it, $90,000 a year for what he does with the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly. And he's sitting there and saying there's so many opportunities if we remove the dams. So there's environmental concerns both ways, but there's opportunities if we remove them. That's what he just said. So that they're telling you right here. And then we're going to listen to Consumers Energy again. They didn't say this during the meeting. I asked one question, and that's if dams are sustainable according to consumers. And they said not monetarily, but it is a green energy. But they're not getting any money through IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that is supposedly about reducing inflation, but really it's about giving billions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, to green energy. If the dam is considered green energy, why aren't they getting any money for it? It's because they already have a plan, and the plan is to bring it back to the natural flow before humans intervened, because humans, according to one group of people, are a plague on this earth, and that everything we do sucks, and that we need to try to mitigate everything that we do. And then there's this other group of people like Thomas Sowell and this person that wrote this huge book. I didn't realize it was going to be so big, called The Ultimate Resource, which basically says human beings and the mind is the ultimate resource, and that we'll never run out of energy if we just use our mind. It's a human versus anti-human idea at the root of the root, and it drives me crazy. Okay, human beings are not a plague. This was made for us, and that huge mindset difference, it changes all the policies that you put in place, right? And it changes whether or not you keep the dams for the people that live there, because the people are what matters, or if you remove them to get the people out of the wilderness and into the cities. And I know that it's not what you want to hear. And my mom says that's not going to happen. She just won't believe it. And I understand that. I understand that you don't want to think about it, but they're telling us right here.
So what we try to do is really weigh the risks and the benefits of whatever they're trying to do, and understanding the reality that these dams were all engineered to last about 50 years. Now they're 100. I don't think anyone in this room is naive enough to think that 50 years in the future, they're going to be functioning like they are today. It's very unlikely.
Yeah, I want to be clear. We have not made any decisions, so we haven't really looked at a lot of that stuff. But we know that if we were to remove our assets and return to the river, there would be a period of time that we have to restore the river to its natural habitat. But I think there'd be opportunities for the community to envision a future that doesn't have a dam and has a naturally flowing river.
According to consumers.
There you go. You just heard it. That they didn't say a single word about that and throughout the entire meeting. And again, I wish I knew the question that was asked to prompt that answer, because I would have liked to have that discussion when I was there. So now next time I go to the next meeting, I'm going to make sure that I figure out some kind of question to prompt an answer like that. Why is the river going to be returned to its natural flow? Real quick, consumers to host another dam meeting for the future of Whitmer Dam, and this is going to take place Wednesday, September 27th in the community center. So 5:30 is when the doors open. The meeting starts at 6. So if you are around this dam, you might want to go and see what's going on, but be aware that the Delphi technique is used during these meetings, and that they might not tell you what's really going on, because they didn't us. Again, Hardy Dam might stay just because they they put a lot of money into a whole new facility next to the dam to monitor the dam and such. And then the spillway is being upgraded. So between those two things, a lot of money is being invested. That's why one of the reasons why I think that dam might stay, but the rest, unfortunately, I think they want to get rid of. Now we're coming here to the New Scientist, which again, I love the site simply because it's mainstream science and it's important to understand what the hell is going on in this crazy new world they're trying to build. So river restoration could help bring beavers back to Somerset. Dragonfly says there is something going on at the dam in Clarkston too. I absolutely know that dams are, for some reason, they're being targeted, okay? Like as far as for removal or definancing or whatever you want to say. But the Midway spill was used, and there's a lot more regulations. I asked them, and that was the other question I asked at the end of the meeting, is whether or not there are regulations that are severely harming consumers' energy and that cost is being put on the consumer. Are there regulations that need to go away that we could look at? And they said, no, we like all the regulations. They all look good. So consumers' energy is fine with all the regulations. They're in full agreement with Michigan government, and that terrible thing that happened with the dam here in Michigan that broke, it brought forth a bunch of regulations. And so the problem, reaction, solution comes to mind for me, is they created a problem by not doing anything with that dam and allowing it to break. And now the solution is more regulations on dams, and they don't like dams. So it works out perfect for the establishment. But I'm going to continue forth. A novel technique to restore a river to its original state prior to any human intervention, known as Stage 0, has been used for the first time at a large scale in the UK. The method involves completely removing the channel that a river runs through and letting it reconnect to its floodplain, which it may have been historically separated from to make space for roads and railways. So the team members did this by filling in a 1.2 kilometer stretch of the river that had historically been artificially deepened and straightened. They removed 4,000 tons of earth to fill the channel and placed 700 tons of fallen timber onto the side to manipulate water flow and provide new habitats in the water body. How is this going to Stage 0? Like you're just changing the manipulation. This is all human manipulation that you're doing in order to allegedly take away human intervention. It's another anti-human project. Spot tests have shown that the water quality is already increasing only 4 weeks after restoration, he says, adding that the new soil environment should also sequester more carbon. Unfortunately, Stage 0 technique isn't particularly scalable in the UK right now. Landscape scale restoration isn't very easy to do at the moment in the UK because the regulatory and funding frameworks just aren't there yet, he says. But I was with this project. We've learned a lot, and hopefully we can pass that learning and knowledge on and make it easier for projects like this in the future. And so they're going to bring in beavers. And so do you think beavers are not going to dam up? I mean, that's how we copied them, right? It's a natural thing, the dam. That's why I am not against it whatsoever, and I don't understand why there's not more funding for dams. Now, getting away from dams, we're jumping into the FBI, the tactics that doomed the case against men charged in kidnapping plot of Michigan governor. So it has come out now, it was all a hoax. The FBI was absolutely being utilized by big government to go against the people and to entrap them. Nobody was really seriously trying to kidnap Whitmer. There were dudes talking shit in the garage about what they'd like to do, leave her stranded in Lake Michigan on a boat with no motor. But were they capable? They didn't have a boat. So I could just imagine the government coming after all of the people that had conversations around the smoke pit at 2 a.m. at Edwards when we're in the middle of the Mojave Desert and we're talking crap and about who knows what, all kinds of crazy things because it's 2 a.m. and there's nobody there. We're guarding planes and there's no one there. And so what what happened is the FBI went into that smoke pit in that guy's garage and was trying to frame these people. It's just crazy to think about. Like, you can talk crap. If you don't like what your governor is doing, you're allowed to talk crap in your garage. Dragonfly said, our township board meeting last night was on early voting sites. Yeah, let me know. Are you guys you have to buy your voting machine? Are your township going to do that? Crazy what's going on with the townships and the voting machines. Again, $20,000+ to get this voting machine here in Michigan. And only the counties are getting grants. So anyway, moving forth with this FBI, through confidential sources, undercover agents, and clandestine recordings, the Justice Department announced in October 2020, law enforcement learned particular individuals were planning to kidnap Michigan Governor Gotion Hiring and acting in furtherance of that plan. But it turned out that those individuals included the government's confidential sources, who pushed the half-baked scheme and orchestrated acts in furtherance of that plan, even when the defendants resisted it. The appearance of entrapment, coupled with the difficulty of distinguishing between fantasy and criminal conspiracy, explains the embarrassing outcome of a federal trial that ended last week when jurors acquitted 2 alleged conspirators and failed to reach verdicts for the other 2. It was a well-deserved rebuke of investigative methods that crossed the line between preventative and invention. Right. Exactly. They invented a crime against and they tried to get regular residents of Michigan, of America, to go to jail for a kidnapping plot when it was the government that was trying to get them to do it. And why? Why? So again, problem, reaction, solution. As I said earlier on Turn the Page when I was talking to Janine, what happened after this is that Lansing now, you can't have a gun. Normal people can't have a gun. The only people that have guns at the Capitol, at the government building, are government officials. And that is the law now. And so now it's more locked down. There's more defense for the people that work at the Capitol. And why do they want more defense? Is it because they're screwing us and manipulating things and they're completely corrupt and people are becoming more and more aware of it and they're afraid of the repercussions of their actions? Possibly. I mean, you can only hope that they're afraid of repercussions, but at this point, they probably don't think there will be any. I mean, what do we do about this? These FBI agents, I thought were charged, but I also read something that they're not, so I need to do more research on that. But the appearance of entrapment coupled with the difficulty. Okay, 2 of the 6 original defendants, Ty Garbin and Caleb Franks, pleaded guilty and testified for the prosecution, saying they willingly participated in the kidnapping plot. But the record compiled by the government shows FBI agents and their informants were determined to advance a narrative that would justify their efforts. So again, they created the problem to get a certain solution. The jurors clearly were troubled by that evidence. They acquitted 2 of the remaining defendants, Daniel Harris and Brandon Castera, of conspiring to kidnap Whitmer and could not agree on the charges against the other 2, Adam Fox and Barry Croft. Prosecutors said the defendants, whom they described as members of right-wing militias, were so enraged by Whitmer's heavy-handed COVID-19 control measures that they resolved to kidnapping her. But it was doubtful that they had the ability to mount such an operation and unclear what the upshot was supposed to be. In September 2020, text message to Dan Chappell, a key FBI informant, who was paid more than $50,000 for his work. Special Agent Jason Chambers said, mission is to kill the governor specifically. But Garbin testified that there was talk of stranding Whitmer in Lake Michigan on a boat without a motor, which would somehow prevent Joe Biden from winning the presidential election. Again, these are just frustrated men who know their government is a corrupt tyrant and yet are unable to do anything because we've hamstrung our men, our citizenry, just Americans in general. Like, what are we supposed to do is just the question. And so these are frustrated men, and they were talking shit about the governor. Do they deserve to go to jail? Do they deserve to have the FBI watching them and trying to set them up? I mean, it's just crazy. The government portrayed Fox, who was commonly dismissed as an indecisive, incompetent, and unserious stoner, as the ringleader. Yet Fox repeatedly talked about abandoning or indefinitely delaying the kidnapping scheme, and even when he discussed the logistics, it was clear he had no realistic plan. He imagined using boats and a helicopter, for instance, even though he has access to neither. Exactly. These are fantasies of a frustrated group of men. And they're allowed to have them. God forbid they think out loud to each other. I mean, it's one thing if they actually had a helicopter and we're gonna, like, I don't know, it's Minority Report in a way, right? You're preventative stuff, but what you're doing is self-fulfilling prophecy. The government portrayed Fox. Okay. Several elements of the plot described by the justice system seem to be products of the government instigation. During a June 2020 meeting highlighted by the FBI, for example, it was an informant who argued that kidnapping was necessary. So they weren't even talking about kidnapping. They talked about leaving her stranded in Lake Michigan, on Lake Michigan. When Fox reported that militia members could not agree on a plan to kidnap Whitmer, or suggested that the idea should be put on the back burner, Chapples continued to promote the scheme. He and the other informants also suggested alternative crimes, such as firing rounds into Whitmer's vacation cottage and destroying her boat. The informants encouraged, coordinated, assisted, or funded various acts that the government cited as evidence of a conspiracy, including the use of encrypted communications, a nighttime drive to Whitmer's cottage that went awry because the FBI gave the wrong address, and several field training exercises, or FTXs. Although the FBI suggested that abbreviation was familiar to the defendants, Castera had to ask Chappell what it meant. The FBI said its informants operated independently, unaware of each other's identities. But audio recordings showed they colluded to produce the evidence the FBI wanted. I am not going to induce any fucking illegal activity that we don't have to, one declared. These FBI tactics are familiar from earlier investigations. In many terrorism cases, the agency likewise used informants to implicate suspects in crimes they otherwise might not have the inclination or wherewithal to commit. We have a saying in my office: Special Agent Henrik Impola told a confidential informant after the kidnapping suspects were arrested, "Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story." Now there you have it. What we already knew to be true. Wow, it was a hoax the whole time. Who knew? Tim Pool. If you don't watch Timcast, it's a pretty good podcast. A bunch of millennials sitting around talking about news. Michigan AG asked judge to prevent FBI entrapment accusations at upcoming Whitmer kidnap plot trial. This was before the trial on August 14th. But the fact that the AG asked the judge to forbid FBI entrapment accusations is like, that's manipulating the case. Don't you think? I mean, why the hell is the AG getting involved and asking not to talk about something that's true? Craziness. So, commission votes to ban all guns in the state capitol. The Michigan State Capitol Commission voted to ban all weapons from the Capitol building with a narrow exception. Current lawmakers can still bring weapons if they have concealed carry permits. And of course, the Capitol Police, which works for the government, will have guns, and so they are the only ones that are allowed to have guns. And that is why gun bans are absolutely terrible for society, and like the war on drugs, is because what you're saying is that the only people that will have guns is the government. Are you really okay with that? Moving on, over here we have the real issue in the UAW strike. This is out of The Atlantic. This one's a really big one. The strikes, before I jump in, I want to be perfectly clear on my stance on unions. I have no idea. I understand the concept of a union and the merits of that, where you have, I'm for the workers. Of course, I'm for the workers. They unfortunately are treated. They're treated very, very poorly. Okay. I understand. I worked at Starbucks for a little while, and that's not the same, obviously, as working this kind of job. But the point is that you feel replaceable, especially in those types of jobs. Maybe it's a little bit different if you're in a union, but Starbucks is like, you're just another number. Easy in, easy out. We don't care. They don't care about turnover rates. And so unions are supposed to protect that, from my understanding. But what happens is it's centralized power, right? And so unfortunately, centralized power has a propensity for corruption, because even if somebody awesome started the project, somebody that's going to manipulate it is going to come in and then look at all the weaknesses and exploit the hell out of that centralized system. And it's unfortunate that that happens, but it happens more often now than most of history, probably because, as Nietzsche said, of the death of God, we don't really have values, but I'm not going to get into that. My whole point is that the unions, I'm unsure of. I like the idea, but it doesn't seem to come to fruition the way that it's supposed to. It doesn't seem to really help the people. And this union strike worries me because already there are people laid off, right? Permanent strike. Ford lays off 600 workers due to this strike. So I'm going to get into the strike, the details of this, but I hope it's not a cover-up for what was already taking place, that these companies are going bust, that they need to clear house, they need to get rid of people, they are putting in AI and automation and replacing people. And so this is basically an excuse. Well, you guys went on strike and now we're bringing in AI and automation and we don't need you. And I just have a terrible feeling. But let's go into this story. A trio of bills Biden passed through Congress during his first 2 years in Oval Office has generated a torrent of private sector investment into clean energy projects. But so far, most of that green investment and the jobs it will create are flowing into red-leaning communities that are generally hostile to both the Democratic Party and labor unions. So this is the Atlantic. So it's going to be more left-leaning, from what I understand, but it doesn't matter. The information is good, and you're a thinking human being, and you can realize there's bias in here. Okay. Congressional Democrats provided all the votes for the legislation that is catalyzing the rapid growth of the new green economy. But with so many of the new energy projects benefiting red places, many people in progressive circles worry that this historic transformation will fail to generate either sufficient political rewards for the president and congressional Democrats or as many good-paying blue-collar jobs as Biden has repeatedly promised. It is terribly complex because if you hear public-private partnerships, I'm sure you've heard them, especially if you've been here any length of time. But what that means, and what I've been listening to the United Nations, really quick, the United Nations right now and the World Economic Forum are doing a sustainable development update with their goals and digitization. And they talk often about the fact that you need public money goes in first. That's why public-private is so public money goes in first because we're the ones taking the risk. Without that public money, without government putting money into the electric vehicle sector, the private wouldn't follow. So we are paying them to do this. Again, it's crazy. And they say it outright, right? They want to mitigate the risk for the private sector. And how they're doing that is they're putting all the risk on the public sector, which is us. Fear that the shift to electric vehicles will reduce the number of quality jobs in the auto industry is the backdrop for the strike the UAW launched at midnight today. And both public and private union officials have made clear that their belief that the auto industry is using the technological transition to mask a second economic transition. They worry that the companies are using the shift from internal combustion engines to carbon-free electric vehicles. That's a lie. They're not carbon-free. To simultaneously shift more of their operations from high-paying union jobs, mostly in northern states, to lower-paying non-union jobs, mostly in the southern states. Well, Gotion is not a union, and that is one of the jobs that Whitmer brought in. So what's that all about? Another thing really quick, the UAW president was just put in place this year in March. And Whitmer, in March of this year, got rid of the right to work statute. So I don't know what all this means. I'm just giving you information. It seems kind of like a setup of some kind, and I'm just calling it out right now. I don't know exactly what's going on, but something smells fishy. Something smells rotten in the state of Denmark. Moreover, the union and its allies worry that the massive federal subsidies Biden's agenda is providing the companies for the EV transition is inadvertently underwriting that transition toward lower wage and non-union plants. As Shawn Fain, the UAW's new president, put in earlier this week. There's a lot with the EV transition that has to happen, and there's hundreds of billions of our taxpayer dollars that are helping fund this, and workers cannot continue to be left behind in that equation. As the strike approached, the Biden administration took conspicuous steps to respond to those concerns by announcing a suite of multi-million-dollar Department of Energy loans and grants designed to incentivize the auto companies to convert existing unionized plants to EV production. Once again, the public is going forth with this risk, and I just did a story 2 days ago, Monday, about Gotion. We were giving them $8 billion total of investment of funds. It's a $2 billion facility. So they're getting $6 billion and pocketing it. I mean, I don't understand. And that with China has tons of subsidies too. So as the strike approached, the Biden administration took the president's policy position is absolutely clear. He's pro-union. One senior White House official who asked not to be identified while describing internal discussions told me. He thinks that the companies that are receiving the benefits should respect their right to organize, should not interfere with workers' ability to exercise that right, and he wants to see these jobs be good union jobs. From a policy perspective, there is no daylight between the president's policy's preference and where the UAW is or the other unions are. Really quick, I want to just share this. Biden signs bill to block U.S. railroad strike. This was just December 2nd of last year. So when he says that he's pro-union, he's a liar because he blocked a strike. And if you're pro-union, you block a strike, that's hypocritical. You can't do that. So you're not pro-union. Only when it's convenient for you, President Biden, are you pro-union. Let's just be real. The challenge for Biden administration in delivering on that pledge is the decisions that the auto companies and other industries are making in response to the bills he signed to promote more domestic investment. The bipartisan infrastructure law, a measure to encourage more U.S. production of semiconductors, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which contains federal assistance for the domestic manufacture and deployment of low-carbon energy sources. Just how much money? Again, with the Inflation Reduction Act, which contains federal assistance for domestic manufacture and deployment of low-carbon energy. How does it have to do with reducing inflation? The tax subsidies and federal grants and loans in those bills have triggered a towering wave of new domestic investments across a broad range of industries producing clean energy. The big auto manufacturers have announced nearly $90 billion in spending on manufacturing facilities to produce EVs in just the past 2 years, according to the Center for Automotive Research, a nonpartisan Michigan-based think tank. $90 billion. Suppliers and the companies, including firms producing semiconductors for automotive use, are investing billions more in the EV transition. Brookings Metro, a nonpartisan think tank, calculated the total private sector investment in EV manufacturing under Biden has reached nearly $140 billion. Red states are receiving so many of the new projects partly because they have lower tax rate and electricity costs. But most analysts agree that companies have also channeled so much of their new investments towards red states because most of them have right-to-work laws that make it more difficult for unions to organize. So Whitmer paved the way, made it really easy for the union to organize. And what that means in the bigger picture, I'm not sure yet, but that is a piece of the puzzle that I'm seeing. Now, the red states receiving them because of lower taxes and electricity costs just tells me what I already knew, which is if you have more freedom, if you have less regulations and which means less taxes, then you will bring businesses without bribing them with billions of taxpayer dollars like the blue states are doing. So those are your two methods. You can either have closer to a free market where you don't have as many taxes and regulations, the government interference, and therefore you have lower costs all the way around and can have lower prices at the end result. Your product can be cheaper. Or you can have high taxes, big government, less freedom, and you have to bribe companies with tax dollars to come to the state. I think that I would much rather have a free market. And the auto industry, this preference for states' resistance to unions has translated into a surge of investments in the South. Brookings Metro calculated that the South has attracted 55% of the total investment in electric vehicles and batteries under Biden. That's more than double the portion of the new clean vehicle investment that has flowed into the Midwest, whose existing auto plants are largely unionized. That torrent of new money includes plans to build EVs or their batteries by Hyundai and Rivian in Georgia, which, by the way, it's funny that you say that Georgia, when Georgian governor was one of 3 that went over to Davos earlier this year. There was Whitmer from Michigan, the guy from Georgia, don't know his name, and Pritzker from Illinois. Those were the big 3, and those are the 3 that are bringing over all these EVs, which are all linked to China, but China's linked to the United Nations, as is the United States and Russia, which, again, Ukraine is complaining that Russia has too much of a say in the United Nations, but yeah, it's one of the big 5. Anyway, Toyota in North Carolina, Tesla in Texas, BMW in South Carolina, Mercedes-Benz in Alabama, General Motors in Tennessee, and Ford in Tennessee and Kentucky. So what you could see here, potentially, you're starting to see a picture of how Trump can win Michigan, right? How he is going to win Michigan, according to what I think. And again, I'm not a Trump fan, but this is what I think is going to happen. I think Trump's going to win. And part of it is going to be because of this huge issue with EVs and the fact that you're not just talking about the manufacturing of these EVs, but now you're talking about mechanics, right? The new mechanic is going to be a software engineer, because these electric vehicles are cars or computers on wheels. Computer. They are going to require software engineers in order to fix them. They are not going to require mechanics. And so the whole landscape is changing. You got to think about colleges too. They have whole departments on how to fix combustion vehicles and how they work. What is going to happen to all of those college programs and such? I mean, this is so huge. And so Trump is going to jump on this. He already is. He said he's going to be there on September 27th at one of the strikes here in Michigan. And so to me, that says that the strike's going to continue on past that. It's part of the narrative, right? But I don't want to get too far in the weeds. We need to understand how big this picture is, though, because I don't think the unions are asking for enough. They're talking about money, and they're talking about tier systems, but they're not talking about guaranteeing jobs when automation and AI hit, re-educating as far as retraining. I don't like re-educating. That's not the right thing. Retraining in order to understand how to work with AI to do your job instead of just replacing with someone younger who knows AI. Like the strike, the people that are going on strike, they need to have more understanding of the technology, the technological aspect of this big push, and try to mitigate for their people the damage that will be done. So a lot going on with people that work in the auto industry. And again, I don't think that they're looking at the big picture. I don't think they're doing enough talking about the tier system. The Southern EV boom is reinforcing a long-term shift in the auto industry's center of gravity that has weakened the UAW's position. Heavily unionized, Democratic-leaning Michigan still employs many more people in the industry than any other state. But starting in the mid-1990s, it's in plants by Mercedes in Alabama and BMW in South Carolina. The industry's employment has steadily shifted to the South. Since the early 90s, the South's share of total auto industry employment has roughly doubled from 15 to 30%, while the Midwest share has fallen from 60 to about 45%. This was from a regional economist. Kuykendall said he would not be surprised if the pace of this regional transition accelerates as the companies move deeper into the technological transition to electric vehicles. What, already 42 minutes on, only got the notification now. Oh, well, thank you for joining me, and I'm sorry you missed the first bit, but hopefully you get time to go check it out. once I'm done here, but we're talking about from the Atlantic, the UAW strike, which again, this is going to bring Trump really into conversation, and it's going to be a big point for Trump on why I think he's going to win in 2024. Excuse me. Because yeah, this article is laying out too that even though Biden says he's pro-union and all this stuff, the what actually is happening with his policies, that's what this Atlantic article is talking about, is that it's helping the red states, it's helping Republicans. In the strike that began this morning, it is seeking a raise of about 40% over the next 4 years, and the restoration of automatic pay increases for inflation, as well as health and retirement benefits that it surrendered when the companies faced bankruptcy amid the 2008 financial crisis. But even if the union succeeds at winning a favorable contract, that could just increase the incentive for the auto industry to shift more jobs to non-union plants across the South, or even worse, do automation even faster. Which, again, I'm worried about that. 600 people have already lost their job here in Michigan. It was just announced yesterday. From all evidence, automakers appear to be utilizing the shift to electric vehicles to do everything in their power to lower job quality for the very workers that they are relying on to make this transition happen. Jason Walsh, an executive director of the Blue-Green Alliance, a coalition of labor unions and environmentalists, told me. Those concerns have prompted the UAW to demand in the contract talks that the auto companies guarantee that workers now building internal combustion engine vehicles will be assured jobs as the companies switch towards manufacturing more EVs. Again, where does this lead mechanics and professors and all the different jobs that manufacture ICE vehicles? We'll call them ICE vehicles. That's the acronym, internal combustion. We're going to come down here. Bain's message appears to have been received. The administration's tone was different in late August when the Energy Department announced that it was making available $2 billion in grants and $10 billion in loan guarantees under the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as another $3.5 billion in grants under the Infrastructure Bill to subsidize the conversion of existing plants to make electric vehicles and their batteries. Once again, where are they getting this money? Because it's, to me, if they're printing it, then that is inflating the money supply, and that would be doing the exact opposite of reducing inflation. Which, again, just like the Patriotic Act was the most unpatriotic thing that's ever been, Inflation Reduction Act just means more inflation. Because 10 billion here, 2 billion there, 3.5 billion over there, all towards electric vehicles that do not have the demand. It is being shoved down our throat. So all of the problems that we're facing right now, it comes from central planners. It comes from this need to tell everybody how to live and what we need to do to save the planet, as if they know for a fact that it's dying and that humans are causing it because we're a disease. So the root of the root, again, it's not just establishment versus anti-establishment. This is pro-humanity, that you think life on Earth and human beings being here is a good thing, or you think we're a freaking plague or disease. And of course, I think that plague disease, the outcomes of that is to hate your neighbor. And so any idea that it leads to you hating your neighbor is a terrible idea. I keep getting into rants. I'm sorry. Love your neighbor and, try to have your own ideas, think for yourself, and don't just believe the central planners. They don't have your best interests in mind, and everything proves it that's going on today. That message reflected Biden's own priorities. The senior White House official told me this week, talking about right here, Granholm. We are going to focus on financing projects that are in long-standing automaking communities that keep folks already working on the payroll, projects that advance collective bargaining agreements and create high-paying, long-lasting jobs, Granholm told reporter. That's the message reflected Biden's own priorities. The senior White House official told me this week. All I would say is the president is not agnostic about where the clean energy investments are flowing. He's the president for all of America. But all of America ought to respect the right to organize. He is trying to move the system toward good-paying jobs and more union destiny. Yeah, I don't think so. The Inflation Reduction Act's biggest incentives for building electric vehicles are generous tax credits for both producers and consumers. And those credits are available to companies that build and source a specified share of their materials for EVs domestically, whether or not they use union labor. So that is how Gotion, who's not union, is getting $8 billion. These tax credits from this Inflation Reduction Act are going to a Chinese company. Looming over all these maneuvers is former President Donald Trump's relentless attack on Biden's clean energy agenda. So here it is. In speeches, Trump has repeatedly declared that Biden's intertwined proposals to promote EVs will kill countless union auto worker jobs forever, especially in Michigan and the Midwest. Trump and some of the other 2024 GOP candidates have pledged to repeal IRA's clean energy incentives, as well as Biden's proposed fuel economy standards for cars and light trucks, which would require the companies to massively shift their sales towards EVs over the next decade. In effect, Trump is presenting the transition to EVs as another example in his broader claim that the left is seeking to uproot and transform America as his supporters know and understand it. Now, as Americans know and understand it, not just his supporters. I mean, while many labor leaders have endorsed Biden for a second term, Fain has pointedly withheld the UAW's endorsement. And Fain has publicly warned that Trump's denunciation of the EV transition could find a receptive audience among his members if the union can't win a generous contract and strong guarantees of job security. Given the importance of the industrial Midwest to the president's reelection hopes, Biden may have nearly as much at stake as Fain in the outcome of this strike. So I think that was a pretty good article out of The Atlantic. Gives you an idea of how maybe a more left-leaning or Democratic publication thinks about this topic. This is out of Michigan watchdog Capitol Confidential. UAW president threatens to escalate strike. This just gives a few more details about what they're asking for, and then I want to get into the AI really quick. The United Auto Workers strike against Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis so far includes only about 10% of the union's 150,000 members. But the strike will escalate if serious progress is not made toward a new contract by noon Friday, UAW President Shawn Fain warned in a video posted to Twitter on Monday night. So he posted this warning, and Ford responded, so I'll get into that. For the first time in UAW history, members are on strike against the entire Big Three at once. The UAW's terms include 46% salary hike, the elimination of wage tiers from previous contracts, and a 4-day work week. That's another one I forgot. It's really important. This is what they're talking about. This is the only way that they're trying to combat AI, I think. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said serious discussions should take place about the 32-hour work week proposal, not just in UAW negotiation, but nationwide. Sanders endorsed robots and artificial intelligence as an answer to the productivity lost by a shorter work week. We are looking at an explosion in this country of AI and robotics, and that means that the average worker is going to be much more productive. Worker productivity is going to increase significantly, Sanders said. No, it means that some workers will... yes. Worker productivity is going to increase, which means that you need less of them. So once there was 30 people, now with AI's help, only 10 people, let's say. Obviously, I just made that number up right now, but just to give you an idea of how it could affect, it could be more than that, but I think it'd be at least that. It's going to be rough. Jobs are just changing, but where does that leave more elderly people that don't know the language as well? I mean, I've said it before on here. My nephew, he's a Zoomer. He knows the language of computers 10 times better than I do. I know it better than my Gen X husband, and so on and so forth. As you learn a language, if you learn it, the younger you learn it, the easier it is for you. And that's the case with technology. It is just a language. Share this tab instead. Permanent strike. Ford lays off 600 workers due to the UAW strike. Just hours after it was reported that Stellantis could be shuttering 18 facilities as part of a new improved contract with the UAW, Ford faces additional realities of the ongoing strike. It has laid off 600 workers at the Michigan Assembly's plant body construction department. So again, is this going to cover up a bunch of jobs that were already going away. And so now they're going to blame the worker for this shift, even though the shift was already being forced upon us. I think about these things because they use everything they possibly can against us. Even if there's like a natural cycle of something that happens, like the fourth turning, they know about it and they'll use it against us in whatever way so that they can gain more power. And, they're going to use it to their advantage. There are people that will use any type of exploitation to their advantage. And there are people that refuse to do that. And they're the ones that get exploited against. So, complex world, again, without values, it's hard to say. I don't think you actually saw this, but Biden signed the bill because I was showing just myself. This came out of Reuters, so this was something that happened last year. Biden is not pro-union. All right. The UAW and other unions must focus more on AI and automation in their negotiations. This is out of the Harvard Business Review. Couldn't agree more. They're not doing enough. I don't think they understand exactly how big this is. Dragonfly says, I never thought about that. Can you clarify? I'm sorry. I talk so much. What exactly have you not thought about? The advance of AI and automation technologies in the workplace requires new approaches to labor relations. Yet efforts by such trade unions as the United Auto Workers, Teamsters, and International Warehouse and Longshore Union efforts to negotiate a better future for their members appear to be stuck in the past. This short-sightedness is especially worrying for young workers who need effective representation at a time when the AI-driven workplace is taking shape. Employers should also be concerned because a lack of worker engagement in the change process today stores up problems for the future. Both sides should take to heart the protracted strike involving Hollywood actors and writers. The actors union SAG-AFTRA recently joined the Writers Guild of America on the picket lines for the first time in 63 years. The use of AI by movie and TV producers is one of the key issues that divides the sides. For example, there are concerns that computerized simulations of actors could replace the actors themselves, and writers will be relegated to refining AI-generated scripts. Resolving these issues will take time, but at least in this case, the parties have started the process before AI became an industry mainstay. And here's another thing I just thought of. In the future, we might not even have real human beings as actors. You could just create a digital actor, I guess, and use that character from the metaverse, basically, and use that character over and over and call them an actor, but they don't really exist. Like, I never thought about it. It's just crazy to think. And so no more will there be, Brad Pitt, who was a real human who acted, and then they take the AI and create a Brad Pitt. That's what they're worried about, which is a good worry. They could recreate Brad Pitt without ever using him in the acting. But again, think about them just creating somebody equivalent to Brad Pitt. That person doesn't even exist. It's just crazy world we're building for ourselves. The future may involve fewer drivers operating not behind the wheel of a truck or van, but behind a console as they manage fleets of autonomous vehicles. Exactly. It'll be more like a video game. There are people that spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars and create a whole, like, it looks like you're in a semi truck, but I'm sitting here in my own house but I'm looking at my screen and I have screens all around me. So one looks like I'm looking out the window, and then you have something on your head. You can fly planes like this too on the computer. So you have this on your head that tracks where your eyes are going. So that way, when you're driving your truck or flying your plane, you look over, it looks over, and then you see out your back window. It's nuts. Thousands of dollars, and you're pretending you're driving a truck. But what if that's how you drive trucks in the future? I mean, allegedly an AI will drive it, but what if we can't get that far and you still need somebody, but they could drive from their own home? They're driving the truck. It's just so weird. It was just a video game, and now it could be a job. Barb says we have fake ones already. Just pay close attention to the advertisements. Right. So what you're saying is there's the actors. So Brad Pitt is not really in the commercial. It's actually CGI. It's a computer program that looks like Brad Pitt, talks like him, but it's not him. Right. And I agree. I've seen it's like it's getting really hard to tell though in some cases, and lighting has a lot to do with it. So yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell, and will it ever be impossible to tell? Like that's the question. Yes, she says. Yep. Yeah, it's crazy time to be alive. Crazy. Another question that needs to be addressed is how to train people to work alongside AI in the workplace. So, yes, I completely agree with that. Jobs will be there. It's just going to be they're different. They're going to be utilizing software. So you have to that's why I'm saying you're going to be software engineers instead of mechanics. AI's adaptation rate may be more rapid, but employers and employees have time to prepare for the workplace changes it will inevitably bring. Moreover, even if many workers stay in the same jobs with the same titles in the short or medium term, their jobs will change. They will likely see more repetitive tasks delegated to automated systems and have to perform more monitoring functions, right? That's why the jobs will change. They're doing the work you once did, but you have to make sure they're doing it right. So you kind of become an AI manager. The demand for new skills, such as the ability to use a growing array of data and to spot aberrations that might disrupt automated processes, will increase. Right. So you need to know it's going to be data. That's maybe another job, recognizing data and patterns, which human beings, you'll never beat human beings at pattern recognition. Can't program it to be better than us. Today's workers need ongoing incremental reskilling or upskilling to maintain a stable or improving career path. Displaced workers need substantive retraining to get their job or career. Young people entering the workforce need a foundation of skills aligned with their aptitudes and the prevailing demand for human labor. Unions should demand that companies invest in their members' futures. The pace of change is a cause for concern. AI is advancing rapidly, so the longer labor and employer representatives take to confront worker-related issues, the more difficult it will be to address them. Now is the time for labor unions to use their leverage, which may not last long as AI tools become better, to ensure the future of their members. So I think that we have a lot more to discuss when it comes to the UAW and the unions. Let me know what you think about unions in general. Like I said, I am for workers' rights. We do need to do something to help workers. They should be getting more money, especially when billions of dollars of our taxpayer money, which shouldn't be, but it is, it's going to corporations to bribe them to do EVs. That's basically what's going on. And so we need to have workers protected, but is the union the best way to do that? All right, we got the digital technologies directly benefit 70% of SDG targets, say ITU and United Nations DP and partners. So right now, the United Nations is having several different meetings, and I think the World Economic Forum as well. And they're all talking about the Sustainable Development Goals and how they can manipulate the world. But this directly ties into the digitization of the world and automation and all of that. So they want to use it for their goals. And in fact, they need to use it in order to get their goals implemented, which makes sense to me. More than 2/3 of the United Nations targets for sustainable development can benefit directly from digital technologies, according to the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. Organizers of the Sustainable Development Goal Digital, which is the conference going on right now as we speak, of which opened today at the United Nations headquarters in New York. I wonder who is there. I wish I could get the guest list. I want to know who is going and promising things to the United Nations. Oh, and by the way, I found out the reason why it's just called an agreement and not a treaty. Same thing with that WHO agreement that just was happening this year. is because you don't need Congress for an agreement. It's just a verbal agreement. You don't need Congress. But if it was a treaty, it'd have to go through Congress. So that is how they get away with this. I heard that a bunch. It's just an agreement. Yeah. With digital technology so closely linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG Digital event highlights how safe, inclusive, and scalable digital solutions can put the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development back on track amid concerns that the world may miss the vision for people, planet, and prosperity that was set in 2015. You know what's hilarious is that when I went to the Consumers Energy meeting, they said that we care about 3 things: people, planet, prosperity. They're touting United Nations agenda, and I don't think they realize it. They might, but I don't think they do. The SDG Digital Acceleration Agenda, a global analysis of the connections between digital technologies and sustainable development, was released as part of the SDG Digital to provide a roadmap for governments, on their digital transformation journey and to promote action and financing. They are manipulating the digital transformation. It's their plans. With only a fraction of the SDGs on track at the halfway point of the 2030 Agenda. How is this the halfway? Oh, because it started in the 90s. It is urgent to ensure that everyone everywhere can build their own digital futures, said ITU Secretary General Martin and UNDP Administrator Steiner in the foreword of SDG Digital Acceleration Agenda. The recent breakthroughs in digital technology have unleashed unprecedented opportunities, and with them, new avenues for digital innovation in our race against time to fulfill the promise of the 2030 Agenda. Again, we didn't vote for these people that made the promise. Allegedly, we voted for Biden. He went and talked to the United Nations. Coming down here, data in the SDG Digital Acceleration Agenda suggests that countries which improved their digital maturity as measured by digital affordability and infrastructure indices outpace their peers in SDG progress for selected income levels. When I listen to the United Nations, they're constantly talking about 2 billion people aren't online, and they need to get online because that's what's equitable. And it's like, maybe those people don't want to get online and be entrapped in your metaverse. But I have another question for you. If they created a world where you could go in and kind of like the Matrix, where you could download a program and you can go in and be a gladiator or whatever, you could do whatever it is you want to do. You could be a king and have a queen, and it's all a digital program, but you can trick your mind. This is what they want to do. They can trick your brain into believing that you are a king or a queen and that you have a kingdom, and like you can go into this world and live that life, and you believe like you can trick your mind. Would you do it? Would you do it instead of living in this real world? Would you go into the metaverse and live in that world? That is my question. Let me know in the comments. If you're watching this later, let me know. Melisandra says, no thanks. I agree. I say no thanks. But I can see how maybe if life was so bad here, or if you believe that you're a disease on this, ball flying through space, infinite space, and your choices don't really matter, which brings nihilism and narcissism. If you believed all that, I could understand why you'd want to live in the metaverse. And so that is another reason why they're promoting this anti-life message, and they're making it hell on earth in a way, because that way you want to live in the metaverse. And that's just my thoughts. I mean, again, these people are very anti-human. The agenda also profiles the opportunities for sustainable development offered by advancements such as generative AI, 5G networks, and blockchain. They are going to use the blockchain technology against the people. And crypto bros that are for freedom, I'm sorry, but the blockchain technology, the cryptocurrency, that was all a beta test to figure out the weaknesses of the system, how it can work exactly. And so unfortunately, the crypto bros, it's not about freedom. And that's my take from everything I've read. We don't know who created the cryptocurrency, but anything that would actually compete against the central bank, Federal Reserve Central Bank, would never exist, okay? That if you look into different things, the people that oppose the Federal Reserve died in the Titanic. Like, there is no way in hell that cryptocurrency, a real threat to central banks, would come out and be allowed. And I'm sorry to everybody who believes in crypto. This is just my take. You don't have to agree with me. And you know, the world is a better place when we have diversity of ideas. But blockchain is absolutely going to be used against us because, again, all of our information will be in a block. So that way our digital ID is the block. And then we're chained to each other. So that way it's centralized in a way. So it's decentralization within a central framework. And it's perfect for the establishment, the central planners. And I went on a little rant about crypto, and I'm sorry for that. The SDG Digital highlights that the funding gap of over US $3.7 trillion for the SDGs, should focus international efforts on enablers such as infrastructure and connectivity, as well as the pooling of resources through collaboration, including the private sector and the utilization of diverse financing methods. So $3 trillion is how much that they need for their goals, to put their goals into place. And that is, again, infrastructure and connectivity. This is about getting the 5G network on track, getting everyone a digital ID, getting everyone in the metaverse, and it's going to cost $3 trillion to enslave us. A series of high-impact initiatives focused on mobilizing further leadership and investment to bring progress to scale between now and 2030. This is the formal opening of SDG as part of the UN's Action Weekend. This includes the UN High Impact Initiative on digital public infrastructures to scale inclusive and open digital ecosystems for the SDGs. Today, decisions by countries on how to build their digital public infrastructure, DPI, will have lasting consequences on their opportunity to grow and innovate and to achieve the SDGs by 2030. Sounds like a direct threat to me. You better get your digital public infrastructure up and running, better get that 5G going, get the connection, the Internet of Things all together, get that data not just stagnant, collecting in some computer somewhere, taking up a bunch of water, but instead it needs to be utilized in whatever manner the central planners want. And in order to do that, you need the Internet of Things, which just means everything is talking to each other. Your stove, your fridge, your TV, everything, your door, your door lock in the front there, everything will be talking to each other if they have their way. That's the infrastructure. Digital public infrastructure represents the roads and bridges of our new era on which countries can transport a range of vital services to citizens, from e-health to e-government services to online education and social protection, said Steiner. As our global community's shared plan for a better future in the Sustainable Development Goals faces challenges, bold investments in DPI by governments are a tried and tested means to get them back on track. An ambition that the UN is matching by empowering 100 countries with a range of now vital DPI solutions to ensure that everyone everywhere can build their own digital futures. Everyone everywhere. No one left behind, baby. Which means everybody left behind, right? No child left behind. All the children are left behind. Earlier in the week, ITU announced a decline in the number of people worldwide without a connection to the internet to 2.6 billion people in 2023 from 2.7 billion in 2022. The statistic on the global offline population is important for tracking connectivity, a foundation of using technology for sustainable development. So there you go. In order to have sustainable development, we need to track and manage, just like Rosa Koire says, all things, all people, all plants, all infrastructure, everything in the world will have a chip, an RFID chip, will be tracked and monitored if they have their way. That is the goal. That is the plan. And they say 2030 now, but they have plans all the way to 2050. It's just 2030. They have like a lot of big plans they want in place by then. Coming over here really quick, ChatGPT's environmental impact ignored by climate warriors. They talk about crypto, about how Bitcoin mining is energy intensive, but they're not talking about ChatGPT, which is owned or at least financed heavily by Bill Gates. And all of these data centers, they take so much water, so much energy. They're talking about rolling blackouts for California people, but when it comes to their data machines, they're not having rolling blackouts. They're online at all times. Their cloud, the cloud just means somebody else's computer. Those computers are running at all times. There's computers for big data. They don't care about that energy use. You don't talk about that energy use. It's only us that there's a problem with how much energy we're using. They can use as much as they want for their data collection. Let's see, we have stayed away from anything crypto. Don't want to be in a crypt. Laugh out loud. Yeah. Crypt. Yeah, I mean, language is really important. Spelling, television programming. There's so many different ways that we don't really think about language itself and how important it is and what it's really trying to say. Like corporation, the short is corpse. But anyway, Governor Whitmer launches National Park Service Mobility Challenge program. This came out in August. I don't know how I missed it. This is, let's see. Yes. This is the last article that I want to share with you. Look out for it where you are. This is Michigan, but this is happening in many, many places. So Whitmer has joined National Park Service to launch the National Park Michigan Mobility Challenge. This challenge is a challenge issued to the global mobility industry to identify and deploy advanced mobility and electrification technologies in and around 4 of Michigan's 5 national parks: Keweenaw National Historical Park, Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, River Raisin National Battlefield Park, and Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore. The state anticipates the challenge will attract industry investments and talent from across the nation. They will receive $2.7 million. Oh, they do receive $2.7 million. This is what's going on. Small-scale electrical shuttles and automated driving systems. Multi-passenger transit services such as small-scale electric shuttles, either human-operated or DS-operated. These technologies provide visitors with a greater variety of transportation options, ease navigation in and around MPS sites, replace private motor vehicle trips, alleviate parking and roadway congestion in busy areas, improve access for persons for disabilities, and reduce the environmental impact on visitors' travel. So there it goes, right there. Replace private motor vehicle trips. Right now, like places like Oxbow Park, you can have golf carts in there. Are they going to let electric golf carts? Maybe no gas. I don't know how that's going to work. Multimodal electric charging hubs, integrated multimodal electric charging hubs in and around NHS gateway communities. With the advancement of electric mobility devices, the state and MPS will create more capacity for the public and fleet operators to charge their vehicles. Okay, so, and then bikes. They want to make sure that you can ride a bike. So they're talking about offering that. I just thought it was very interesting. Look out for your park near you to have a lot more electric capability. And one thing that worries me is, electric vehicles, they have fire problems. And these parks, there's not a lot of firefighting capability around them. It takes quite a while to get to these parks. Maybe not these 5 that she's working on right here because they are much bigger. But I'm thinking about like Newaygo State Park or most parks. If they have this electric vehicle stuff being pushed upon them, do they have the capability to put the fires out that can come with it? Something to consider. I think that's all I have for you today, guys. I had to do a little bit shorter today, although it doesn't seem like it has been that much shorter. I really want to say thank you once again for hanging out. I hope that you learned something about what's going on. There's so much all the time. I really want to talk about the voter fraud. It's just that there's so much information coming out all the time. And a part of me, I'm going to be completely honest with you, a part of me, like, it gets kind of a duh. Like, voter fraud is a duh thing. It's important to understand exactly how it's happening so that maybe we could stop it, but you're not going to stop it as long as we're allowing 9 days of early voting. We're not going to stop it if we allow everybody to get a driver's license, and then you have automated voter registration cards if you get your driver's license. Like, there's too many variables. We need to go back to paper ballot, one day, same day voting, and you need an ID. And that's the only way to stop voter fraud, because these machines being online, that's what I read an article, just the other day, that the machines were online. Well, that means that they could be hacked. And if there is a possibility that it's hacked, then you might as well just say it's hacked in a way. And so you can't hack pen and paper. That's why I have notebooks, and I still take pen and paper notes quite often, not as often as I should, but you never know. Everything on this computer, this is all, in a way, not real. Like, if there was no electricity, there is no cryptocurrency, there is no internet, there is no metaverse, it's all a fabricated world that needs electricity. So live in the real world as much as you can. Obviously, I'm in the digital world quite often, but at the end of the day, I know that if the electricity goes off, if we have rolling blackouts, none of this is going to matter. What's going to matter is if I can feed myself and have heat in the real world. Thank you, Dragonfly. Thank you for all you do. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you hanging out and chatting with me. And also, that would be great. My husband has to work at elections. He sets up machines and delivers them. So yes, I know I do. I need to talk about the voter registration, especially because it's happening here in Michigan. It's a huge story, and it is important. So I'm going to try to get to that. I really want to get to the Grand Rapids too. There's so much going on there with the Office of Sustainability and the 15-minute city that's coming there. There's just so much happening so quickly. That's why we need more muckrakers, and everybody is kind of interested in something a little bit different. And that's what, again, diversity of ideas, that's what makes this world beautiful. There is an objective truth, but there are different angles to look at that objective truth. And I think that's the only way you can really try to understand it, is to look at it from as many different angles as possible. And that is what I try to do. I know nothing, but at the same time, if I gather enough information to make a reasonable observation or decision, like, I'm not going to sit on the fence. I will always accept new information, and I can accept it or reject it as I see fit and see if it plugs into my framework and makes sense for how I view the world. But yeah, I think that if more people did that, the world would be a better, more robust place. This whole everybody should think the same is a no-go. And not only is it boring, but it's destructive. So continue to think for yourself, but don't be afraid to know there is an objective truth, and we should always be trying to search for it. Or if we know it, we should try to spread it to others. And again, love your neighbor, strengthen numbers, and faith over fear. Okay, guys? I will see you next week, Monday at 10 a.m. Have a great weekend.